Standard internet loan calculators generally assume a regular length first period, but in the real world, a normal length first period is unlikely. If you are trying to generate an amortization schedule where the first payment doesn't fall exactly one period after the loan starts, you have likely noticed that the numbers you are seeing may seem to be off. What you are seeing is due to the initial odd days interest calculation. Whether you're dealing with a long first period or a short first period, the odd days calculation has to be handled correctly to keep your schedule accurate. In this tutorial, we're going to walk through the 7 specific settings available in the Ultimate Financial Calculator, as well as our other loan-related calculators, for handling these irregular periods, also known as stub periods. We will explain the 4 options available for long periods and the 3 for short periods. First, a quick overview of initial irregular loan periods. With any loan, there are always 2 critical dates. The date the loan proceeds become available is known as the loan origination date and is sometimes referred to as the loan's closing date. The second critical date is the first payment due date. Additionally, unless the note requires only one payment, the loan will usually have a scheduled payment frequency. Monthly payments are the most common frequency, but the payment frequency can be any interval that the lender and borrower agree to. When the period between the origination date and the first payment due date does not match the payment frequency, we have a loan with an irregular initial payment period. For example, if the loan's origination date is April 10th, 2026, and the first payment is due on June 1st, 2026, then the loan has a long initial period. April 10th to June 1st is longer than a month. On the other hand, if the loan's origination date is May 11th and the first payment date is June 1st, the initial period is short. In the lending industry, the interest that accrues during an irregular first period is often called odd days interest. Let's look at how to configure these settings in the calculator. We will start by showing you the long first period options. I will set the origination date to April 10th to create a long first period. Now, click on the Settings button and select Interest Options. In the upper portion of the window is the 4 long period options. Notice that the settings are for how the odd days interest will be charged. Exactly what are the odd days? To understand how the calculator handles a long first period, we must identify the odd days. The odd days are the extra days preceding what would otherwise be a single, full payment period. In our example, the first payment is due June 1st. Working backward, a standard full-month period would begin on May 1st. Therefore, the period from May 1st to June 1st is your regular full-length period. The odd days are the days remaining between the origination date of April 10th and the start of that regular period on May 1st. How these days are handled depends on your loan contract. In many cases, this is collected at closing as prepaid interest. Note: prepaid interest is a concept specifically addressed by U.S. Regulation Z. If you need to prepare an APR disclosure statement, prepaid interest is deducted from the loan proceeds when calculating the amount financed. The Ultimate Financial Calculator and our APR calculator handles this for you automatically. Because there are several ways to treat initial odd day interest, the Ultimate Financial Calculator, as well as our other calculators, provide 4 specific options for long periods. Let me quickly show you how each setting impacts the amortization schedule. I will leave the calculator set to its default setting, with origination. Let's go to the schedule. As mentioned, the odd day interest is collected as prepaid interest. It is due at the loan closing. Note that even with a payment amount over $1,000, the loan balance shown is still the original amount of the note. Now, let's go back and change options. We will select With first, and we will select Save Changes to close. Open the schedule again. This time, the odd day interest is added to the first payment amount. Thus, the first payment is larger than the other scheduled payments. Now, let's go back to show you one other long period option. Change the setting to amortize. When you select this option, the odd day interest is rolled into the loan amount, and it is amortized over the entire term of the loan. Let's save our change. Before looking at the schedule, there is one more thing we need to do. When interest is amortized, it increases the payment amount. Because our calculators allow the user to set any payment amount they desire, we need to tell the calculator not to use the original calculated payment amount. Therefore, click in the Amount column in the Payment row and type a U to tell the calculator to recalculate the payment. Click on Calculate. Note the slightly higher payment amount. Now let's look at the amortization schedule. You will immediately notice that all payment amounts are equal. I'm not going to take your time to show you the schedule for the None option. The None option creates a schedule that ignores the odd days, and consequently, interest is not calculated for the odd days, a very unlikely scenario. Let's quickly look at the short period options. First, to provide a basis for comparison, I will calculate a loan with a regular first period. Set the closing date to May 1st. Type a U to set the payment amount to unknown. Note the payment amount, $2,859. Now we will set up the loan with a short initial period. Click in the Date column in the Loan row. Set the date to May 11th. Go to the Interest options again. When a note has an initial short period, less interest is due because the borrower has had use of the loan proceeds for fewer days. The user has three options. The calculator's default for a short period is no payment reduction. I will not show you the schedule for this since the payment amount doesn't change. However, if you use this option, note that the last payment will be reduced, sometimes significantly. This is because when the borrower pays the normal payment amount, more of the payment is allocated to principal for the first payment since less interest is due. This reduces the principal balance, which causes less interest to be due over the entire term of the loan. Let's select Reduce first and look at the payment schedule. The first payment is reduced by nearly $500, and if you scroll to the end of the schedule, there is no excessive rounding required for the last payment amount. Now, let's look at the final option. Go to the interest options one last time, select Reduce All. Once again, we need to recalculate the payment amount. Click in the Amount column in the Payment row and set the amount to Unknown. You don't need to click the Calculate button. When you click the Schedule button, it calculates the unknown. Notice the payment is now $2,855 for all payments. Lenders call this a level payment also if you scroll to the end of the schedule. You can see again that the rounding amount is minimal. That concludes this tutorial. Congratulations on making it to the end. If you now know more than you ever expected to know about stub periods, odd day interest, and prepaid interest, please consider giving this video a thumbs up. We would really appreciate it.